Sexual practices in Kenya and their annual festivities. Kenya, a land known for its vast savannas, rich cultural heritage, and world-famous wildlife, also boasts a complex array of traditional practices that continue to shape its society. Among these are annual festivities that, while often celebrating heritage and community, sometimes intersect with customs that may seem controversial or uncomfortable in today's world. One such intersection is the relationship between sexual practices and annual festivities in Kenya, a subject that is often shrouded in secrecy but can have significant cultural and social implications. From the coastal towns of Mombasa to the central highlands of Kiambu, the rituals and traditions vary widely. However, sexual practices, especially those tied to initiation rites and annual festivals, often form part of these celebrations. While these customs have evolved over time, remnants of their traditional forms continue to influence the lives of many Kenyans. Initiation ceremonies and sexual rites. Many of Kenya's ethnic groups, especially in the rural areas, practice initiation ceremonies that mark the transition from childhood to adulthood. These ceremonies, although diverse, often carry significant sexual undertones. The most well-known among these are the rites performed by the Kikuyu, Maasai, Luo, and Kalenjin communities. In the past, these initiation ceremonies, particularly those involving circumcision, were seen as rites of passage for both boys and girls. Sexual activity in this context was seen as an essential part of one's entry into adulthood, symbolizing fertility, maturity, and readiness for marriage. For example, among the Maasai and Kalenjin people, young men and women might undergo public circumcisions as part of a community-wide celebration. Following this, the period of sexual learning would often commence, where the older members of the community would teach the younger generation about sexual roles, responsibilities, and even sexual intercourse. These rites were performed within the context of deep community bonds and age-old customs. However, as modernity progresses, many of these practices are being questioned for their relevance and ethical implications. In some regions of Kenya, like parts of Nyanza and Western Kenya, annual festivals related to these initiation rites still include sexual teachings. This can sometimes extend to unregulated activities under the guise of cultural tradition, such as disco matanga events, where young girls and boys often engage in sexual activity, encouraged by older community members as a demonstration of their newfound maturity. Fertility and sexual celebrations in festivals. Kenya is also home to several annual festivities that directly or indirectly celebrate fertility and sexuality. These festivals are often intertwined with ancestral worship, agricultural practices, and the continuation of life. One of the most fascinating examples is the Lamu Cultural Festival, which takes place annually on the islands of Lamu. Lamu is renowned for its historical significance and its blend of Swahili, Arab, and African cultural practices. While the festival is best known for its boats, dances, and music, it also features rituals associated with fertility and the sexual power that comes with it. In the past, certain fertility rituals were carried out during the festival, particularly those that involved the blessing of young couples in order to ensure prosperity and an abundant harvest. While these rituals have become less overtly sexual in modern times, some aspects of them are still reflected in the festival's celebratory nature, including the idea of sexual rejuvenation and vitality. Similarly, the Nandi Hills festivals, held by the Nandi people, incorporate fertility dances, where both men and women express their sexuality through dance. These rituals were once part of broader fertility ceremonies to ensure good crops and healthy children, where sexual symbolism played a role in invoking blessings. Today, these ceremonies are less focused on direct sexual acts, but still carry cultural significance, as the celebration of fertility and family remains important in Nandi society. The rise of sexual exploitation during festivals. However, not all sexual practices associated with festivals in Kenya are benign or rooted in tradition. In recent years, there has been a concerning rise in sexual exploitation during some of these events, especially in urban areas or towns that host large gatherings. Festivals, especially those held in tourist hotspots like Mombasa, Malindi, and Naivasha, have been linked to increased cases of sex tourism, where foreign nationals exploit local customs under the guise of celebration and tradition. In these settings, young people, particularly women and girls, are often sexually exploited by wealthy tourists who come to Kenya for more than just the sights and sounds. For example, the Mombasa Carnival has attracted both tourists and locals for decades, celebrating Kenya's coastal culture with music, dance, and food. Unfortunately, these events have also drawn attention from individuals looking to exploit the celebrations for sexual purposes. Some festival goers, often from abroad, engage in transactions that involve young girls and boys who are sometimes coerced or lured into offering sexual favors in exchange for money or gifts. Gender and power dynamics in sexual practices. During festivities, a critical aspect of sexual practices tied to festivals is the role of gender and power dynamics. In many Kenyan communities, traditional festivals often underscore male dominance, while women's sexuality is regulated by cultural norms. For example, during the Maasai coming-of-age ceremonies, young women are expected to demonstrate modesty and restraint in the face of sexual advances, while young men are often encouraged to prove their strength and masculinity through sexual exploits. This deeply ingrained gender imbalance has far-reaching consequences on how sexual behavior is viewed, controlled, and practiced during these events. In some festivals, the participation of women in sexual rites or sexual-based performances is a requirement for full community acceptance. However, this can lead to sexual exploitation, as women's participation is often coerced rather than voluntary. Even in more modern festivities where sexual practices are less publicly acknowledged, these gender disparities still play a significant role in shaping the events and determining who holds the power within the community. Government response and the need for cultural sensitivity. In recent years, the Kenyan government has made strides toward regulating the sexual aspects of cultural practices, particularly those that involve minors or promote sexual exploitation. Laws related to child protection, such as the Sexual Offenses Act of 2006, have been crucial in criminalizing child sex tourism, the exploitation of minors, and harmful traditional practices. However, the enforcement of these laws remains a challenge, particularly in rural areas where traditional practices are still deeply rooted in the community. The government's attempt to balance cultural respect with the protection of individual rights has created tensions between those who see these practices as part of their heritage and those who advocate for change to protect vulnerable children and women. The solution, many argue, lies in a sensitive approach, one that engages with local communities, educates young people about their rights, and introduces modern approaches to old traditions that respect human dignity while preserving cultural identity. NGOs and grassroots organizations, such as the Kenya Red Cross in Childline, Kenya, have been active in promoting awareness, offering education, and providing support to those affected by sexual exploitation during festivals. Conclusion: the complex intersection of tradition and modernity. Kenya's annual festivals, like any cultural celebration, are multifaceted. They celebrate life, heritage, and community. But they also carry within them deep, sometimes problematic, traditions related to sexual practices. As Kenya continues to develop and modernize, it will need to confront the tension between preserving cultural practices and protecting the rights and safety of its citizens, especially the vulnerable. The conversation about sexual practices during Kenyan festivities is not about condemning traditions outright, but about acknowledging the harm that some practices can inflict. It's about finding a balance where culture evolves with respect for human dignity, where every person, especially children, can celebrate their heritage without being subject to exploitation or harm. Thanks for watching. Please do like and subscribe for more.